Hello, my name is Camila, and for as long as I can remember, chemistry has fascinated me. As a child, I would spend hours in the kitchen, captivated by the way different ingredients reacted when mixed. My mother was often exasperated by my experiments, especially when they resulted in messes that took ages to clean. But no matter how many times she scolded me, I remained undeterred. There was something magical about transformation, the way simple components could come together to create something entirely new. That passion led me to pursue a degree in chemical engineering after high school. University was a whirlwind of late-night study sessions, complex formulas, and thrilling discoveries in the lab. After graduation, I secured a position at a reputable pharmaceutical company, where I was fortunate enough to be part of a team developing new medications. There was a deep sense of fulfillment in my work. I felt that in some small way, I was helping create life-saving treatments, making a tangible difference in people's lives. 3 years ago, fate led me to Luca. We met at a small gathering hosted by a mutual friend, and from the moment our eyes met, I felt an undeniable connection. Luca was tall, with sandy blonde hair and a warm, easygoing smile that instantly put me at ease. We struck up a conversation and, before we knew it, the evening had slipped away in a blur of laughter and deep discussions. That night marked the beginning of something beautiful. Luca was charming and thoughtful, always knowing the right words to say to make me feel cherished. Over the years, our bond only grew stronger, and after 3 wonderful years together, we decided to marry. Our wedding was an intimate affair, attended only by our closest friends and family. It was a day filled with love, laughter, and promises of a shared future. After our wedding, I moved into Luca's childhood home, a large, old house filled with history and memories. But it was not just Luca who lived there. His mother, Giana, was bedridden, requiring constant care, and Luca had devoted himself to looking after her. I admired his dedication, but I couldn't ignore the weight of responsibility he bore alone. Gently, I suggested that perhaps we should consider a care facility, where professionals could ensure Giana received the medical attention she needed. The idea clearly unsettled Luca. He insisted that his mother had always wished to remain in her home, and he wasn't willing to go against her wishes. The next day, his sister, Zoe, visited. From the moment I met her, I sensed a wall between us. Zoe had recently been widowed, inheriting a substantial fortune from her late husband, who had been significantly older than her. Despite the loss, she carried herself with an air of dominance, a woman accustomed to having things her way. I had never managed to truly connect with her, and any attempts to do so were met with indifference or thinly veiled hostility. As soon as she stepped into the house, she confronted Luca and me about the possibility of moving their mother to a care facility. I tried to explain that it was merely a suggestion, an option worth considering, but Zoe was adamant. "Our mother will stay here until the end," she declared, her voice sharp with finality. Seeing the tension rise, I chose to drop the subject, not wanting to escalate things, especially given her recent loss. Living under the same roof as Zoe proved to be a challenge. She had a habit of arriving unannounced, her presence often accompanied by complaints and criticisms. She made it no secret that she disapproved of me and never missed an opportunity to make that clear. One evening, as I prepared a simple chicken dish for dinner, she entered the kitchen, took one glance at the meal, and scoffed. "This looks painfully bland," she remarked, wrinkling her nose in disdain. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to remain calm. "It's what Luca and I usually eat," I replied evenly, determined not to let her get under my skin. Before I could say anything more, Luca walked in, immediately sensing the tension. "What's going on?" he asked, looking between us. Zoe wasted no time voicing her displeasure. "This food isn't suitable for Mother," she declared. "She needs something better." Luca turned to me, his expression a mix of frustration and silent pleading. I sighed. "Luca, I've been trying my best, but nothing I do seems to satisfy her." The following days were tense. Zoe's visits became even more frequent, and with each one, she found something new to criticize. I felt as though I was constantly walking on eggshells, never sure what would set her off next. One evening, she stormed in and immediately began berating me about the state of the house. "Camila, this place is a disaster. Don't you ever clean?" she snapped, surveying the living room with a look of disgust. I clenched my fists, struggling to keep my composure. "I clean every day, Zoe. If you helped out instead of just complaining, it might be easier." Her eyes flashed with anger. "How dare you speak to me like that?" I'm just trying to help. Help? I let out a humorless laugh. By criticizing everything I do, that's not helping, Zoe. Luca stepped in. Camila, please, calm down. I turned to him in disbelief. Calm down? She's constantly attacking me, and I'm just supposed to take it? Zoe shot me one last glare before storming out, leaving an oppressive silence in her wake. Things only got worse from there. 8 months later, Giana's health took a drastic turn, and despite our efforts, she passed away. Her death was a painful blow, especially for Luca. The funeral was somber, but Zoe's bitterness only deepened. At the graveside, she turned to me with burning accusation in her eyes. If you had found the right treatment, Mom might still be here. I was stunned. Zoe, I'm not a doctor. I did everything I could. Excuses, she spat, her words laced with venom. After the funeral, I confronted Luca. You need to talk to her. She can't keep blaming me for everything. His response was like a knife to my heart. Camila, you're just making things worse. Stop provoking her. I felt betrayed. After all I had done, he was still unwilling to stand up for me. The months that followed were heavy with grief, but also with something else, an unshakable feeling that something wasn't right. One day, while sorting through Giana's belongings, I stumbled upon a stack of medical records. As I flipped through them, a detail caught my eye. 4 years prior, Giana had been in excellent health, yet she had died from internal bleeding. Something didn't add up. That evening, when Luca came home, I showed him the papers. 4 years ago, she was fine, and yet, she died of internal bleeding. Luca frowned, scanning the documents. That is strange. What are you thinking? I hesitated before asking, didn't Zoe's husband also die of internal bleeding? Luca's face paled. Yes, and both of them had unexplained bruises. A chilling silence settled between us as realization dawned. The pieces were beginning to form a terrifying picture. I lay there, barely clinging to consciousness, my body weak, my vision blurred, my stomach churned with pain, and a cold sweat covered my skin. The distant sound of the door creaking open barely registered, but then I heard Zoe's voice cut through the haze like a sharpened blade. What's going on here? She demanded, her voice laced with false concern. Luca's panicked voice followed immediately. Camila says the wine was poisoned. She's sick. Zoe scoffed, the venom in her tone unmistakable. Poisoned? She's drunk and making up lies to turn you against me. I wanted to speak, to cry out, but my body refused to obey. My limbs felt like lead, my tongue thick and useless in my mouth. I barely registered Luca rushing toward the kitchen, mumbling something about a cold compress. Zoe, however, remained behind, crouching beside me. I felt her fingers brush against my cheek, a mockery of comfort, before she leaned in close. A cruel smile curled her lips as she whispered, "It's over for you, Camila. In a few hours, you'll be dead, hemorrhaging from the inside out. Then it'll be Luca's turn, and after that, everything will be mine." She gave my cheek a soft pat, like one would give to a dying pet. Before straightening up, I wanted to fight, to push her away, to scream for Luca, but the darkness was closing in fast. The last thing I heard before I lost consciousness was Luca returning, his voice thick with worry and confusion. When I awoke, the sterile scent of antiseptic filled my nostrils. The rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor punctuated the stillness of the hospital room. My eyelids felt impossibly heavy, and as I forced them open, the blurry figure of a nurse moving about the room slowly came into focus. "Oh, you're awake," she said brightly, hurrying to my bedside with a relieved smile. "How are you feeling?" "Like I've been run over," I croaked, my throat dry and raw. She offered me a sip of water, and I drank greedily, savoring the cool relief. "You've been out for a few days," she explained. "Your husband called the rescue service just in time, even though his sister tried her best to stop him." My fingers tightened around the thin hospital blanket. "Luca called?" I whispered, my mind reeling, "even with Zoe trying to stop him?" The nurse nodded. "Yeah, he did, and it's a good thing too. The doctor said another hour and it might have been too late." The door opened then, and a new wave of uncertainty settled over me. In walked Matthew, the private detective I had hired, alongside a stern-looking police officer. "Camila, good to see you awake," Matthew said as he pulled up a chair, his expression a mix of relief and concern. I tried to sit up, wincing at the pain that flared in my muscles. "Matthew, Officer Martinez," the officer supplied. "What's going on?" What happened with Zoe? I asked, my voice hoarse but desperate for answers. Matthew's expression darkened. You did it, Camila. You helped us neutralize a dangerous criminal. Officer Martinez nodded. We've opened a criminal case against Zoe. After receiving the toxicology report from your blood work, we launched a deeper investigation. We exhumed the bodies of her ex-husband and her mother. The forensic analysis confirmed that both were poisoned, with warfarin. He paused, allowing the words to sink in before adding, the same substance found in your system. A shudder ran through me. My eyes burned with unshed tears. Just like me, I whispered, the full horror of Zoe's crimes hitting me all at once. Yes, Martinez confirmed. The slow internal bleeding, it was no accident. She's been doing this for years. I let out a shaky breath as tears slipped down my cheeks. The nightmare was finally over, but the weight of it still pressed on my chest. Matthew placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. Camila, you were incredibly brave. Because of you, we were able to stop her before she could claim more lives. The rest of the conversation faded into a blur. They explained the next steps in Zoe's prosecution, but my mind drifted, weighed down by a mix of relief and sorrow. And then, inevitably, my thoughts turned to Luca, his loyalty to his sister, his inability to see the truth until it was nearly too late. The day of the trial was nerve-wracking. As I sat in the courtroom, my heart pounded in my chest. Zoe sat across from me, her expression unreadable. Luca was there too, his face drawn with exhaustion and disbelief. As the proceedings began, Luca turned to me, his voice low and filled with hesitation. Camila, I can't believe Zoe would do something like this. It feels like you're just out for revenge. His words cut deeper than any knife. Even after everything, he still doubted me. The prosecution laid out Zoe's crimes in chilling detail. When it was my turn to testify, my hands trembled as I took my seat. Camila, can you describe when you first started suspecting something was wrong? The prosecutor asked. I took a deep breath. After I moved in with Luca, I started noticing strange symptoms, bruising, dizziness, exhaustion. Then I remembered that Luca's mother had exhibited similar symptoms before she passed away. I swallowed hard, pushing through the emotions. I hired a private detective, and he discovered Zoe was in severe financial trouble. Then, she tried to poison me too. Did Zoe ever say anything to you directly that suggested her guilt? Yes, I said, my voice cracking, right before I lost consciousness. She told me it was over for me, and that Luca would be next. The courtroom was silent. Then, to everyone's shock, Zoe let out a cold laugh. Yes, I did it, she admitted with a smirk. I poisoned my husband, I poisoned our mother, and I would have finished the job with Camila and Luca if she hadn't been such a nosy little rat. Luca's face crumpled, tears streaming down his cheeks. He had no choice but to believe it now. The judge called for order, and soon after, Zoe was convicted on multiple counts of murder and attempted murder. Justice was served. After the trial, I made the difficult decision to divorce Luca. There was no way to repair the trust that had been broken. I focused on healing, finding solace in painting and the quiet company of friends. One afternoon, as I sipped coffee with my friend Luna, she asked, "Have you heard from Luca?" I sighed. "Yeah, he's tried to reach out, but I can't go back." "Good for you," Luna said with a nod. "You deserve better." Later that night, my phone buzzed. A message from Luca. "Camila, I know I've hurt you deeply. Can we please talk one last time?" I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. "Luca, there's nothing left to say. We both need to move on. I wish you well." As I pressed send, a weight lifted off my chest. I was free. It was time to leave the past behind and embrace my future, one step at a time.